This is some pretty fascinating concepts that touch every aspect of people's lives and really get to the fundamentals of business in a way that a lot of people won't talk about it. So there are a lot of how to start a business, how to get involved in this kind of stuff. This is all about optimization and thinking about business in the context of yours and everyone else's lives and really the bigger economy. So this is a pitch in some way, and this is why I think certain services are important for small business owners and teams. My team wants to help the people working in small businesses to build wealth with lower risk and support them in growing their human and financial wealth within the business and throughout society at large. So we're going to talk about two different forms of capital here. Capital is basically a form of measurable wealth. One of those is human capital. That's the present value of a person's future earnings. At least that's what it is in financial form. And then financial capital is the financial assets minus their financial liabilities, typically purchased or granted as compensation for work. What I want to start with is this idea of what we need to do to measure this and understand it. And there's basically a few services on the financial and management side that I think are really important. One, standardized bookkeeping. You need to provide regular trusted information on the true profitability and the cash flow of the business and individuals within the business. We want to pair that bookkeeping, backward facing, with financial planning and analysis that's informed by tax and compliance and wealth management strategies. So we can provide effective and aligned compensation, better governance and management for owners, for managers, and for the families that are reliant on this for their livelihood. Ultimately, we live in a society where businesses and the success of a business directly impacts the financial and truly relational wealth of families and businesses. We've been working over the last decade, and some of my partners have been working for hundreds of years to develop solutions for the life cycle of personal, family, and community wealth so that we can allow a society of small business owners to develop. We're going to talk about this in basically 4 categories. So there's like the founder stage where you're working with you less than 5 people. Then there's the operator stage where you're working with a larger team. You're not setting things up anymore, but things are running and you're actually operating in daily activities. Then we're going to go to the asset stage where there's a tangible value in the business. It could actually be sold. People who are working for the business might actually think that you giving them ownership in the business would be worth something. And then the expansion stage, which is when that asset can just grow. It can either expand wide, franchise, make just new locations, or it can reinvest in new products and services that are aligned. Within there, just like the United States government and a lot of other organizations, there are basically 3 levels of operations. One is the executive, one is the legislative, and one is the governance function or the judicial. The executive functions in the business are overseen and driven by an executive team that drives the progress forward each day, executes, and that makes up the majority of the costs of the business. The legislative work is then performed by high-level managers, advisors, and executives that set up the rules and engagement within the business and make a corpus of knowledge and principles to draw from for the executive teams. They basically are setting the rules and regulations and the ways in which things are judged. Finally, each business has the judicial function. That is basically saying, how is the executive team meeting the goals of the legislative team? And a lot of times these blur, but it is important to see the difference of these. And that's something that we're not going to go into so much in this conversation, but just think about it in that way. Separate those things out. It's helpful and it helps understand and balance what the responsibilities are in your business. The most important functions of the executive functions of the business are separated into 3 basic areas: frontline workers, middle managers, senior managers, or the executive team. And a lot of this comes from Peter Drucker. Wow. So each of those tiers, frontline, middle, senior, contains specific levels of opportunity and responsibility within and for the business. And we want here to hire and develop talent within each of these organizations that provide a fresh and durable workforce that all levels can grow creatively. Without the effective application of knowledge to work under a good governance structure, organizations cannot maintain durable value. My interests, finance, and the backing of data science aim to create effective feedback loops and are applied within this management culture so it can communicate the effectiveness of the business as a business to its customers, as an employer to its employees and potential employees, and so that we can grow a team, and then to our investors who are seeing the business's asset as the product that we're selling or that they're getting access to. The proper application of finance and management is applicable to businesses as an entity, and it's the duty of management to communicate this. As a person, we are unable to effectively respond without a team to all of the effective financial realities in the world. We need teams to do this. If we as individuals or our teams don't choose the right financial offerings, legal structures, and respond to the demands of being an owner in society, or we don't have the right protections in place to mitigate risks, we are taking risk with not only our own lives, but the lives of everyone that we work with. And so our company effectively is to propagate good practices and applying finance and management products and knowledge as part of a business's compensation package so that you can properly and greatly increase the long-term wealth building potential of your business and your team in this virtuous cycle. Let's get back to this human value and think about this over time. So a person's human capital increases with their education and their training that can actually be applied. If I go learn something that's completely non-applicable to my business, that isn't going to increase my human capital, but the human capital, and then that investment grows from that. So you can actually grow your human capital by learning more how to work with other people in concert, or by learning more about how to do your job more effectively. And then a person's financial capital increases as they invest money earned from their application of human capital, and that investment grows. Basically, what is that financial capital going into? It's going into technologies, other people's labor, or capital assets that people use in that labor. Generally, here's what happens with human capital. Since it's the present value of future earnings, human capital starts off here, and maybe it can go up if you get better at certain things, but over time, you're just getting less time. So your human capital goes down over time. Your financial capital goes up over time, or at least should. Every time you trade human capital, a year of your work, you should take some of that, put it into financial capital. That financial capital is hiring people, building factories, whatever it is that allows that to grow over time. So you've got kind of this basically curve where over time, your human capital and your financial capital should go in different directions. If that's not happening, your total capital is going to go down over time. And if it's happening effectively, your total capital is going to go up over time. And ultimately, that graph is something that you just need to know for yourself. I mean, if you're getting older and your total capital is going down, you're not effectively trading human capital for financial capital. And that's the number one issue that's going to happen with anyone on their team. Now, your capital can go down over time as you transfer it to like other members of your family, or as you approach the end of your life. But generally, when you're in your prime earning ages, it's a very bad thing to see that your total capital is going down. And so we want to think about how to improve that. I'm going to show you some graphs, and we're basically just going to make some assumptions. We're going to make some assumptions that are potentials for people working in businesses that are, relatively confident based on today's numbers in like 2025, 2026. Starting out from 21 to 30, say you're making an average of $60,000. You're saving or investing 10% of that. 31 to 40, now you're getting up to $100,000 on average a year. So over 31 to 40, you made $1 million and you saved 20% of that. From 41 to 50, you made $120,000 each year, $1.2 million. Say you're investing more of that. 51, 60, 160, highest earning years. Say you're investing 25% then. 61 to 70, half of that you're making money at the highest rate you were, but then it goes down at the end of it, you probably aren't working. 71 to 80, now you're only making $20,000 a year, potentially just what your investment returns are, or working part-time. And then, onwards, it's about that. And you kind of got this idea that your savings and investment rate should go up as you get older until a certain point, and then it goes down as you start diminishing your investments. A really important thing, and one of the things that we target, is the risk of those investments, and then the average tax-adjusted and inflation-adjusted return. As we get richer, each individual dollar is worth less to us in spending. This means that there are diminishing returns to greater wealth. When we have a little income, more income is really impactful. But as we get more wealthy, we might not even notice it. That is diminishing returns. And it is helpful to maximize our risk and reward so that we can understand. It's definitely a lot worse to lose a couple bucks when you're immediately going to go into debt or not be able to pay for something really important to you than it is to lose a few bucks when you have way more than you need. In fact, a lot of people who have way more money than they could technically need get in trouble because they just spend it all, because they don't actually see the returns of having, and they're easily convinced to spend money on excessive things. Business can be a lot of things, but technically a business is just a tax structure and a legal structure for assisting in standardizing regulations and legal and governance proceedings. Tax efficiency and legal efficiency is therefore a critical part of your business strategy, and when you're investing in businesses, as part of your investment strategy. Over time, as human capital diminishes, the financial capital and its risk-return characteristics to begin to dominate the wealth of an individual. So I was working a lot on the human capital side, or at least the collective human capital side, when I was working as a fractional chief financial officer, strategic financial advisor inside of business. How do we make this business make everyone collectively make more money from each unit of effort. That's a human capital related thing. Well, if that business doesn't properly translate that into financial capital over time, as people get older, no matter how much more efficient we make every habitual year of that human capital, it will diminish every year. So we need to actually figure out a way, and that's one of the reasons why it was very important to me to join a team and start adding on these other financial capital advisory portions. Here's a graph that you'll see. Just looking at this graph, your investments in retirement include the diversified financial assets purchase. In this equation, the investments in retirement are the diversified financial assets purchase that are not in the person's primary place of employment. Real estate is just the principal invested in real estate, and the business's employers represent the investment in the business or the compensation in forms of that type of investment. So a person's employee stock ownership plan is technically part of their compensation. It's just going to investment in the business, and we're separating it out so we can kind of see where people's money is going. What's really cool is you'll kind of see that over time, at least in certain businesses, the type of businesses that we want, over time, the cost basis, where you're putting that money in, comes, first of all, it grows overall as you earn more, and then diminishes your cost basis as you're making less money. You just don't have as much to invest. But ultimately, you also understand that as you get more senior and you work in businesses, more of your income, it gets tied to the success of that business for the senior and middle management layers. Real estate, when you start buying a house, getting invested, or if you're exposed to real estate by your business ownership, owning the underlying real estate, and then your investments in retirement, you have more money to invest, so you're spending more money on investments. This is just based on some numbers you can see here. That will change for everybody. I mean, for some people, they're not saving anything, or the only thing they're saving is what their business is giving them. Oftentimes, business stock ownership plans will include a retirement plan that's diversified and a retirement plan in the business. That's the best of both worlds, and then it should be supplemented with someone's individual retirement planning. So why are we doing this? This is for an individual, particularly someone in like middle management. As an owner, your blue portion in this graph, the portion invested in the business, might be way higher than the rest. That's kind of what I've done. I've taken a lot more risk on individual businesses. That's where I plan on getting my wealth, mostly because I'm going to take a lot more ownership for that in my career than the average person. The biggest thing is just to think about these trends and to understand them for yourself and for your employees or anyone else that you're taking some responsibility for the long-term wealth building up. So what we can do as a business owner, though, is we can start saying, how does this apply to many employees? So we're going to extrapolate this individual cost basis of investment thing to a company, and we're just going to look at 1 year with that. So say the average employee's salary in a company is $112,000. This would be a relatively successful company. Their payroll, that direct salaries, is half of all the money that they sell. So, this is a business, maybe a service business that relies pretty heavily on its people. So that's $11 million in sales. A business has that price sales ratio that basically says how much can they sell for based as a ratio to their number of sales. And if it's a durable business, potentially it could be as much as 1.25, maybe be higher, could be lower. Imagining they can have a profit, 1.7 million, so a little less than like around 16%. Their price earnings ratio would be 8. Seems a little bit high, but it's not overwhelmingly high. For big businesses, that might actually be low. That means the price is $14 million, and the cost basis of that investment would be about $3.4 million. So we're actually generating wealth already just by seeing the return on what we put in to get out. That return in this case is about $10 million, 3x return. And if we kind of look at our employees, their percentage of their total investments in the business is 33%. And what of all their income, what's going back in and being invested in the business is about 6%. So you can see that if the employees maintain a reasonable revenue to employee pay ratio as a company grows, even with modest investments in employer, the substantial diversification and long-term value can be built and communicated about the company. So let's just look at that hypothetical P&L step and how we came to that profit. These numbers might be wildly different. Same businesses with 2% profit margins, some have as high as like 30%. So this is kind of a middle ground, probably middle high. This would be a really fine-tuned business, but this is where we want to get. Okay, so let's think about that simulation and let's review the basics, and then we're going to extrapolate both of these. So we have basically two buckets of wealth, the company's wealth and the people's wealth, and then we're going to say, well, what does that tell us about society's wealth? And in aggregate, you take all of the company's wealth and all the individuals' wealth, we start getting an idea of like the economy, and we're going to take that in from like an income level, and I want to look at a spending for everyone in the business. Like, let's just think if you were responsible for everyone's life as a business owner, what would that look like? Obviously, we're not, and no one wants to take that responsibility. But by taking some of that responsibility, we can start seeing how we make the biggest impact on true livable wealth experience of the people that we're working with and in our lives. So here's what I've noticed over time. We can run this scenario for your business, and based on some assumptions about the people working, or if, we work with everyone and do budgeting, we can actually fully understand this top down. And this is something amazing. So most of your money is going to go to investments and profits and taxes. And that'd be a great thing if taxes felt like they were actually an investment in the beautiful future of a country. And it's a terrible thing when you think it's an investment in something that you don't believe in. The next biggest category is going to be your rent and occupancy. Then it's going to be insurance, education, transit, and then there's going to be some others going out. So I want to focus particularly on certain categories: investments and profits, tax optimization, insurance and education, and a little bit on rent and occupancy. Mostly because rent and occupancy represents an investment decision as well. You can buy property, or you can rent property, or you can have your team work from home. Our takeaways is that if we can optimize heavily for creating tax advantage value and helping create affordable opportunities for investments, rent, transit, and food and health, we will be well on our way to creating a compelling and efficient compensation package that gives way more objectively than the money would even count for. So maybe a $112,000 average income for people could provide a $160,000 a year lifestyle. Wow. More benefits, higher quality of life for our employers, less deadweight loss to taxes and financial products, and effectively transitioning human capital to financial capital. Side note, being healthy is the number one form of value. For anyone who is rich but unhealthy, you know this, but just truly think about it. If your body works really well, you don't need as much AC. If you're not needing to go to the hospital, if you don't have allergies that make you need a bunch of medicine, just all these different things. Even just thinking about how many beauty products you would need. I mean, you can naturally look healthy and beautiful if you have your health right. So we've identified our main areas of impact. And here's where I am passionate and where my team can really help you. So 1, we help companies plan for a future where they can attain those type of financial results and pay salaries that are reasonable and potentially even generous. 2, we can set up tax-advantaged and efficient strategies for companies and the employees to provide high-value, low-cost services in business planning, investments, insurance, and potentially rent, occupancy, and transit. I say transit and rent occupancy basically because a lot of times business can pay for some of these in unique ways. And what is transit for? Getting between places that you need to get between. If you don't need to, if your occupancy solves that, you might not need to drive as much, etc. 3rd, we can provide local investment opportunities for diversification to make small businesses and local businesses actually able to invest in each other rather than to being tied to these large, impersonal, bureaucratic nightmares that is kind of traditional investments. So that's the long-term goal, but it starts with these businesses actually becoming investable assets themselves in the same way that these larger companies are. And that works really well for business owners. The final piece of this is financing you and using leverage. If you have solid bookkeeping and accounting in place and the right management, we can work with lenders and financing partners to provide leverage for our company and employees. It's going to allow for much higher quality of life and the ability to take greater risks and weather harder times. So as part of this process, we can also facilitate discussions with lenders to create leverage and recognize how insurance and other things like that play into lowering the risk, and using other financial capital products lower the risk while having access to more capital. It's pretty amazing. We don't do this alone. My team is strategic advisors that work with a variety of partners. And in your own neighborhood, those might be different than in someone else's if we're working with people. But we have really high quality partners. We know how to judge their success, and that's the best part. A lot of times these are internal people. Sometimes they're other teams. But here's the foundational things that we need to make this work. 1, we need good bookkeeping, and we need good tax management. We need CPAs that think their job is to help us pay the littlest legal amount of tax possible. 2, we need to manage payroll and the taxes for our employees. Managing all this on our side for the company is great, but if it gets to the employees and to our owners and they're paying more taxes on the back end, deadweight loss. Then we need an overall tax planning and strategy. So business taxes, all the bookkeeping, that's backward facing. Tax planning and strategy allows us to predict out into the future and make decisions that will lower our overall taxes in the future. Crazy, but again, look at where taxes go and look at what taxes get you. Investments get you returns, taxes get you whatever the government's giving you. This is where we are particularly focused. Financial reporting, planning analysis, and strategist audits. So the tax planning comes with this overall picture of actually having a full financial plan, and when we're auditing and thinking about what can we learn from these financial statements. And we want to be doing that on at least a quarterly basis, but most of the time monthly. And we want to be doing it right as the month turns over so we can make adjustments and get the team in this idea of like the scientific method of testing. Then we need to get insurance. Insurance protects a lot of things. It protects our health, it protects our business, it protects our overhead expenses, it protects us against disability, particularly for in an industry where our hands are important. Insurance, one of the best things that it does, key person insurance, etc., all these things, what it does is A, it gives the business hard assets on its balance sheet, translating human capital or potential human capital into book value. And then the second thing that it does is it protects our downside. Like we said, not having a dollar when you really need a dollar is much worse than not having a dollar when you have $1 million extra dollars. Just obvious. And that's why insurance needs to exist. And truly, again, life insurance, it came about because there were widows being left with no money when their husband died. And the community would have to government together, put a community pot together, or they would have, basically children growing up with no money, limited potential. They don't have a dad to work, and they don't have a financial future. That's two horrible things happening at once. And truly, without certain types of insurance, one bad thing, you getting hurt, you going through something really emotional, a competitor suing you, whatever it could be, can turn into the catastrophizing situation that turns a snowball into an avalanche. And with insurance, you can say, wow, I covered for that. So don't neglect that. It's also tax advantaged often because of just how important it is. Then we need personal investment management. Personal investment management is basically saying, what do we do with all this financial capital at the end? I mean, unless you're going to spend a bunch of time and expertise thinking about what is the best way to do that, how do you coordinate with all these things, it's going to be important for you and your employees to have the right type of planning. Next, we need to make sure we're storing our data effectively. This is kind of relatively new, and a lot of people don't think of it directly related to finance, but it is. Where you store your information about financial and bookkeeping is a core function of finance. Without it, you can't have it. And if you store your information in a way that all of your competitors could read it or could be used against you, or it's very hard to access, so it makes this huge hour-long process every day, or just costs a lot of money to access your information. I mean, there are situations where people's IT budgets get very high and they can't get access to their information unless they pay for that. So we need to just be careful about what are the uses and sources of data. And then that's for our business, and that's also for our personal situations. A lot of people don't think about it, but again, the minute you can't access the paperwork you need to, you could be on the hook for a lot of legal consequences. I'm just going to give a general range of what these things should cost. Whether you're working with us or someone else, this is just kind of where it would cost. If you're at like 1 to 5 people, expect these things to cost about $40,000 a year. If you're in an operator stage, you got to 10 people, maybe 55. Asset stage, you're getting bigger, maybe $100,000 a year. And when you're in expansion, all those things running, 160. Still not that bad. For a full function of all these kind of things, it's worth the budget if you're a professional business. Not everyone will need it. But again, I mean, the core purpose of being in business is to be a financially successful entity. And so having the core essence of finance covered is worth a portion of your revenue. Next, we've got management. You need to make sure that you can hire people, that people are both a skill fit and a culture fit. And then you need to make sure that you're learning from the best people on management. Management itself is a skill that pays massive dividends because it affects everyone in the human capital stack. So just like your investment management, you need management. Expect to pay for that. Expect to find people that are farther along or have done certain things that you can work with. You might need some executive coaching, especially if you're a new executive or if you're trying new things. It's important to invest in yourself and your own learning. A lot of times people will go to an MBA program where they're learning all of these things in like an abstract way when they could work with a coach that has done certain things or an advisor that has done certain things, get hands-on experience, and potentially a lot more benefit for less cost. And then finally, you're going to need potential things like legal partnerships, registered agents. This goes along with some of the insurance and financial products, but everything from irrevocable express trust, private ministerial associations, investment raising in bank partnerships, governments, and management contracts so you can protect yourself, and then intellectual property. Especially for certain businesses, if you don't have intellectual property, you might not have a business in a couple of months. Those don't have to cost as much, but management can be a big and important thing to invest in. Anywhere from like $2,000 on the lower end, I think is reasonable, up until $40,000. And again, these are things that pay dividends. A lot of times people are like, well, I don't really need that. And that's basically like not investing in the core technology of your business, which is the management of other people. The only time when you really won't need that is if you are already really experienced, you've done this before, and you just know your team is excellent. Otherwise, you don't even know what you don't know in this space. Finally, then, on the finance and management side, you're going to need to invest in growth. And that extends from those first two bases. This isn't necessarily always a need. These are more of the optional side of things, but you might need lending applications and network, someone to manage your relationship with banks, lenders, and investors. You also might need investor network and events. Those could also be events for, clients. But basically, how do you get people to start seeing your business as an asset? Third, you might need executive and operations coaching. That's a little bit different than the management consulting. This is coming in for specific things, targeted things, typically like hourly range. This can also be bringing in people who are seniors and just getting them on your team. Really important. You might need to invest in social networking and long-term alignment and structuring for your employees. That can be relatively low cost, but just making sure that you have a place to communicate about that. And then finally, as part of your tax planning and strategy for growth, you're going to want to think about how do you optimize your balance sheet, your assets, and your liabilities and your investments, all of that as part of your planning, especially as you grow. Incredibly important. The largest companies spend an inordinate amount of time on this compared to the smallest companies, and they do it because it provides the largest return. Ultimately, that can vary, but it's not that expensive. This whole thing that we talked about, if you're a small company, if you're making, say, $600,000 a year, $500,000, $600,000, so you're solidly on like the upper end of a founder role and you're successful, maybe $40,000 to $50,000 on this. That's 7%. But, this is a team, and your team size might be 5 people at that size. So 7% of your revenue going to all of those functions seems pretty reasonable. And then as you get larger, up to the 30 and 50 people, your total spending on this could go up into the $100,000 to $200,000 range, but as a percentage of your revenue, it will trend way down. And the main reason is basically like hiring really experienced people or teams outside of you, and then they become less and less of a percentage of the team, but their impact is really large. I think our team's impact, and at least these services that we offer, if we're replacing something that's not working, or if we're adding on something that hasn't been there before, the long-term returns of this are just going to be absolutely massive. Okay, I hope that helps you understand exactly what we're trying to do here and kind of what it would cost. We want to make individual plans. We are fundamentally strategic partners who love solving these problems and love helping connect our partners' services with people that they can help. In business, we are all playing our role. Almost no one goes into bookkeeping and is passionate about bookkeeping because they like tagging transactions. What they like at the end of the day is seeing how those tagging of transactions help people make better decisions. I think I like working with bookkeepers because people who like tagging and maintaining objectively clear information allows me to say, what can we learn about the future and how can we empirically start making hypotheses and tests? I like management reporting that's based on that so that we can talk with people who are experts in their individual fields in the business about what their unique skill sets are to that. And then I like working with people who are great at culture because they're going to tell me things about you and me and how we can work together that uncover why we do this, which is just how we are better humans at creating a future. Ultimately, what do I want to do? I want to work with teams with values-led leaders that want to share the wins, and then I want to make it so that we can share the wins and everyone can feel richer per dollar that we make than they otherwise could have, and particularly protect the downside so that the worst moments don't happen, and then give us the potential for upside in the fact that we can transition these assets effectively across generations and across different people in society. So I'm Andrew Escher. This is the Good Deals team. We work with an amazing set of partners. I'm so thankful for them. I'm so thankful for you. Ultimately, we are here to serve and be a part of excellent teams. And we can't do and specialize in what we do if there are 10s or 20s or 30s or 50s or hundreds of other people out there that are in the grind with their specific purposes, whether that's a product company, whether that's digging land and gardens, developing new energy technologies, just keeping the lights on or the plumbing flowing, building cars, planes. You just do amazing things. And we want to be with you and help you do it the best you can. So that, again, what you do in that human capital, as you learn more, your human capital goes up, but it will go down over time. And then effectively transitioning that into financial capital for you as an individual, and making sure that as a company, we can keep bringing more people in so the company has an overwhelming source of human capital that people with financial capital want to invest in it. I hope this isn't beating a dead horse. I hope this is riding in a live horse in a great cavalry with you. Cheers, and see you next time.